once again, we are very excited to come to our viewers with the sponsorship of Nabi Fry Fund for Culture and AGN, the Assyrian Global Network, to meet another Assyrian author. Today's author's name is Ninos Hanna. We're going to learn more about him, his book, and he's going to inspire us all. So, Ninos, welcome to our program.
Svetlana, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much to you, AGN, Dr. Eden Nabi, who made this introduction on my behalf. I'm grateful to be here and speaking to our people. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, Ninos.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an Assyrian, born and raised in outside Worcester, Massachusetts. I've got my brothers, Sargon and Asher, so you can tell we're just a true Assyrian family. My father moved here. Elias Hanna had moved to the U.S. in the 1970s to start up a new life, and met my mother, who was born and raised here, who's actually half Italian, half Assyrian. And so we have a very tight-knit, active community in the Massachusetts area. Very proud Assyrians here living in Mass. And we've done a lot for a small group. And this book is just one of the many things that the people of Massachusetts have done for the Assyrian community.
I'm happy to hear that. So I did obviously get a chance to read your book. The book is called Life for Legacy, which was introduced to me. And I wanted to say that I really did enjoy the main character, as you know, Ninos, was Aiden. And I could relate to some of his Assyrian qualities of confidence, his quick wit, his sarcasm, even some uncertainty about who he was and what he wanted to do with his life. I mean, he knew what he wanted to do in the beginning. He wanted to be an entertainer, a comedian, an actor, which we know ultimately achieved. But I want to talk about his journey more so. So tell me about yourself before we move on, Ninos. I would like to know about you as an author, an Assyrian, and how you came about. Tell me, first of all, what made you want to be an author, and let's lead into the book.
So, ever since I can remember, starting in high school, I've been actively involved in storytelling, whether it be for a local access TV show, some creative writing on the side. So communications and writing have always been a passion of mine, and reading as well. You can't be an effective communicator if you don't do a lot of reading. And so that led me to pursue this idea of writing a fiction novel targeted for young adults, because at the time I came up with the idea, I was a young adult myself, just in college. And so started to put together the bones, right? What's the message that I want to deliver? And there were so many messages I wanted to deliver at that time. But really, what was the main message I wanted to get? And then also include, bring in my people, bring in the Assyrian people into the fold. I could easily have written a novel and not mention the word Assyrian whatsoever, but I didn't feel like that would be true to my identity, true to who I am as a writer. And I felt like, in looking in our community, we don't really have authors who are writing fiction novels. And if we do, forgive me, we may have a couple out there, but by no means is it a big number. And so I wanted to contribute in that way in hopes to inspire others to do the same, and inspire others to start to write about Assyrians. And then in taking this approach where you've got a main character, Aidan Blair, and in this main character, he's actually half Irish, half Assyrian, really try to bring outsiders in. It's great that we can engage within our own community and get traction within our own community. But my goal was also to bring in outsiders, non-Assyrians, and introduce them to who we are a little bit, and then also entertain them along the process.
Yeah, and get to know, like you said, who we are, what the Assyrians have been through, and where they're at today, exactly. And they're trying so hard to get their identity back. So having, obviously, your first book, is that correct? Can we just clarify?
It is my first and only up to this point. And so I've been trying to get the motivation to work on a second. I'll tell you that there were many times where even with this novel, it sat on my hard drive, and there were days that I loved it. The days I would read the transcript and say, "This is trash. I'm never going to publish this. I'm never going to move forward." And this was a love-hate relationship. I think that still exists even until today with my own work. I've never been one to look at my work and go, "All right, this is perfect. This is exactly what I had envisioned." And so, what really actually at the time, I remember talking to my parents, sharing with them this idea that I had about publishing a novel. And I just remember both my father and mother, fully supporting the idea, even from a financial standpoint, where it was like, we're able to support you with this. Go for it. Don't let anything hold you back. And that helped. In addition to that, I had come across a novel that was co-authored by an Assyrian gentleman by the name of Nuri Kino. And Nuri is a journalist out in Sweden. And so I was intrigued by that novel. I thought it was a really well-written book. And so I reached out to him. I knew it was a long shot. I was like, maybe he won't even respond. But I introduced myself. I told him what I was trying to do. I shared with him a synopsis, even a couple of sample chapters. And I remember the feedback that I received from him was quite harsh at the time, but it served me well because it helped me to kind of reinvigorate this desire to put something out there and to do better, right? He sort of presented a challenge to me. And as Assyrians, we don't back down from challenges. And so I went back to the drawing board. I fine-tuned the novel. I took a slightly different approach here and there. And then I went back to him and he was like, yeah, this is great. This is, you should move forward with this and be proud of what you've done.
So that was your greatest challenge right there. I wanted to talk about your challenges and inspirations.
Oh, that's one of many challenges. Number one was that, that we can, Svetlana, I can tell you, we are our own worst enemies in a lot of ways. And what I mean by that is I'm my own worst critic with this book. Pre-publication and post-publication. You're not going to find anyone who is more critical of the novel than myself. And that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing, right? You don't want to beat yourself up so much that you lose the motivation and the courage and the belief in yourself. And there were times where, I'm not going to lie, there were days that I definitely did have those moments. Well, what am I doing here? No one's going to read this book. But again, this is where having strong foundation helps. And I had that with my wife, Maya, who's an extremely supportive wife, my children, my mother and father, Elias and Deborah. They were there. And even in this case here, like Nuri stepping in, someone who I didn't know personally, but took a look at my work and was, believed in it. And so that went a long way. So that was one challenge. The other is, in addition to Nuri providing feedback, I was working with professional editors as well. So submitting my content to them, having them review and make edits. And there were times where they'd come back and they would actually say, this entire chapter needs to be rewritten. And I'm thinking, wow, it took me, weeks to put together that chapter. And not only am I taking this chapter out, but I had mapped it to future chapters. So now I got to change everything that's happening down there. So there were a lot of revisions, rewriting. And you can do that forever with any book. And so there, that to me was a major challenge as well.
Wow. So, but you conquered them all, and here we are.
Here we are. Yes.
So going back now, I want to focus a little on your book, Life for Legacy. Give us a little overview of your book, Ninos, and talk about, I think the main characters were Aiden, his mom, and his sister Jewel. I wanted to for you to give us a brief overview, a couple of minutes, and tell me if there was any connection between you personally and any of the characters.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I get asked that one a lot, actually. And I was very intentional in trying to come up with a character that was not like me. But people still seem to make that connection in some ways, or in every character I tried. Like if you look, the father in the novel is Irish,
yes.
Right? And my father is the Assyrian. My mom's actually Italian, not even Irish. So I tried to do little things here and there just so that people wouldn't make that association. But I mentioned that there was a main message that I want to send, and it's sort of twofold. number one is a lot of, and this is when I was inspired to write the novel. Right out of college, you feel like you can conquer the world and anything is possible. And that's true. If you really put your mind to something, you will accomplish it. That was one of the main messages I want to send. The other piece, though, is whatever you want comes with a price. And it's, to become number one in Hollywood, there are lots of sacrifices that are going to go along with that. And is it truly what you want? When you look at the sacrifices that have to be made and what you're going to get and if it's truly what you want, God bless you, go for it. But in the novel, you start to see Aiden really discover what life is all about. And in his mind at high school, it was all about becoming famous, making it in Hollywood, making lots of money. And you see it even today, in today's culture. There's sort of this we want to get famous. I'll have our 15 minutes of fame and make millions of dollars. Right. And again, if that's your goal in life and you have reasons for that and you truly believe it and you want it, you're going to get it. But be careful what you wish for at the same time. Really think about what are those things that you want out of life, because there's more to it than just those things. And then the other piece was, again, introducing people to the Assyrian culture. And I didn't do it. It wasn't like in your face. I kind of sprinkled it along through so that if you're a non-Assyrian, you don't feel like, all right, I'm lost here. What is this? What are they doing here? All they're doing is talking about these people that I know nothing about. We sort of introduced little by little.
Yeah, I did notice that you brought it in little by little through all the people almost that Aiden had met.
Yeah.
Along the way. So in saying that, back in high school for Aiden, let's go back. He's a high school teacher. He didn't have a lot of faith in him. His name was Mr. Carter. And he did make a comment. Do you really believe that fame will make you a more valuable person? To tell us a little bit about the character, because I don't think that Mr. Carter had a lot of faith. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's so good. I'm glad you caught on that. I would say Mr. Carter wasn't that he didn't believe. I think he was concerned. He's very risk averse, right? In a certain way where it's like, I care for you. I love you, Aiden. I don't want you to go out and not make it, because the chances are against you. The odds are against you, right? To make it in Hollywood, what is it? 2%, 3% chance. What's going to happen when you don't make it? Or if you don't make it, you're going to, and you have so much more talent and you have so much more to give. It would be a shame to see that happen to you. So Mr. Carter is actually the one person who I did pull from real life. I did have in high school an English teacher named Mr. Carter, and he was a character. And he actually was in the military as well. And even up until, his 60s, he was a reservist. So he would go in, and so military was his thing. And so that was one idea was I'll bring in Mr. Carter. He cares about his students. He wants to see his students succeed. And so he talks to Aiden and he says, look, you got to really, you got to straighten out here, come up with another plan. It's great that you want to be in Hollywood, but what's plan B? You've got to have a plan B. And you can see that in any parent, right? Like any parent tells their kids, like, I want to be a famous musician. All right, well, that's great, but what's your backup plan? It's like, wait, do I need a backup plan if this is really what I want and this is what I want to do? So, yeah.
Right. And then he had a conversation with his mom, just a couple of conversations here and there. His mom was telling him how, we're all trying to hold on to our Assyrian culture and who we are. And Aiden's response to his mom was, nobody really gives a crap about Assyrians, but we know that had changed for Aiden as a character in the book, where he gave the most of himself ultimately. So tell us about that transition for Aiden from not really caring or not really involved in who he was as an Assyrian, as to how his journey led him to really focusing on who he was and wanted to carry on that legacy.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you've got Aiden, who is trying to become a legend, right? Then you've got the Assyrian nation that is already legendary. And he's saying that people don't care about it, right? Like, who cares? Right. And it's funny. It's like, so you're trying to build something for people to care about, but one day they're going to eventually say, who cares? Like, someone else is going to come along and take your spot as well. But really the change it was a gradual change. And it was the idea that he loses his father. He goes out to Hollywood. He promises his family that he's going to make it. He actually does make it. And the book doesn't spend too much time in that part of the process. So he kind of quickly rises up to fame and slowly starts to realize like what he had wished for wasn't wasn't what he thought it would be.
Right.
There was a lot of what was great about Aiden is you always got the truth from him. You see that in his conversation with Mr. Carter. You see that in his conversation with his mother. Like him or hate him, what he has to say, there's a lot of truth to what he's saying, right?
Brutally honest on all accounts.
Brutally honest, exactly. And now he's dealing with people who are not. And there's a lot of phoniness, a lot of lies happening around him. And he starts to quickly pick up on it. And he's like, all right, so here I am. I've sold myself as this independent thinker, as, I'm going to say it like it is, but only when it's convenient for me. Like when I'm around these people in Hollywood, I'm playing the game. But he had this sort of internal conflict. And that's where you start to see him go, all right, you know what? I'm gonna go back to my roots. I'm gonna be who I am, and then you see what that ends up ultimately costing him.
Right, and like the acting had to stop at some point when reality hit in. I would say, right, for him, because he was always acting, scene cut, next, and then he started to realize that life is not about scenes and acting, and ultimately he took advantage of his Oscar. As we know, you and I know, and others that have read your book, that he did make it in Hollywood, as you had mentioned, but he took an opportunity of a lifetime after meeting the homeless man that he played the role for, that I think ultimately changed his life. I think that was the turnaround. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I would start first of all at the Oscar. If you remember in the beginning, from day one, when he was ready to leave home and head out to Hollywood, he promised his sister that one day he would go to the Oscars and she would be his date. And you end up finding out that not once but actually twice he reneged on that promise. And the second time is the one that we spend a lot of time on, because that's the one where his agent sort of arranged a date for him.
Right.
And then, he picked out the most beautiful and most popular actress out in Hollywood at that time to put him with. And so, when you see that, do I take my sister? Do I take her? And ultimately, he does what's best for business, not what's best for family.
Correct.
And so, again, you go to the heart of who Aiden is. The true Aiden would have done what's best for family. And he did it in that situation. And so that's sort of where you start to boil, the water starts to boil, right? He starts to kind of, in his conversation with her, and he gives his speech, that he thinks, in his mind is going to make him a hero, because he really took a stance on something that's very important. And no one came to his defense after that. And that sort of started it. And then to your point, again, when he meets with the homeless man, it really opens up his eyes in a lot of other ways.
Right. So. Yeah. And with his sister, I just want to go back to his younger sister. I think his conscience started to bother him after he had gone to the Oscars with the Drop Dead Gorgeous Woman. Even though he wanted to take his sister desperately, did not want to hurt her feelings by no means. He was torn, but ultimately Tony had won.
Tony had won, and the sister was the one who actually believed in him, right? She was the one from day one. Even his own mother had her doubts and did not want him to go off to Hollywood. Whereas his sister was like, I know you're going to make it. I know we're going to go to the Oscars one day.
Yeah.
And that really energized him. That gave him the boost, the confidence that he needed early on in his career.
Right. Yeah. So he tried. He did try. There was a lot of, I think the environment that he was in didn't allow him to be true to himself, even though he wanted that.
Yeah.
Didn't realize how it would cost him emotionally and psychologically, and as we know, physically.
Yes.
So Aiden decides now to explore his ancient roots, which we talked about. And then I kind of feel like, as we know, Aiden wanted to explore his roots. So he took a little retreat because he got a lot of backlash from Hollywood because of his speech. So he decided to kind of hibernate and find himself.
Yes.
And then he travels back home and hangs out with his mom and his sister, spends a lot of quality time with them, which they all enjoy. Correct me in any way if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
And then when he gets there, I think he does some more soul searching, and then he realizes that I really want to go back to the homeland now.
Yeah.
And he takes the trip with his mom and sister, and then go ahead, Ninos, get away.
So that was again another big moment where you see the full transformation of this character. He now wants to go back and try to find ways in which he can help his people, well, which is great. And I wish we had more Assyrian leaders doing this type of work. I'm proud to say that my father with the Ninos Hanna Foundation, that's something that he's done. He's taking a lot of his hard-earned money here in the U.S. and he's gone back to the homeland to build schools, build hospitals, and just kind of give back to those less fortunate. And so this was a moment for Aiden where, as a reader, you see this full transformation. What's interesting here, and again, this really ties back to the beginning of the novel. I give it away on page 1 or 2.
Yes.
That Aiden, who we're talking about here, is actually dead. Like he dies.
Yeah.
And that was one funny thing, whereas people are like, why did he die at the end? I was like, no, he died at the beginning.
Right.
Maybe you didn't read that part. But that's so as the reader, I really want to hit home this idea that you will accomplish whatever it is you set out to accomplish. There's nothing, if you truly want something, whatever it is, you will make it happen. It's proven, right? But when things don't happen, it's because either we truly didn't want them or they really weren't meant for us. They weren't the best thing. For Aiden, it was, I really want to become a legend. He went ahead and he accomplished that.
Right.
But there was a cost, right? After he made it there, now he finds out who he truly is, but the wheels have already been put in motion for his demise. Now, I will say this. It's okay that he dies. People who get hung up on that, I feel like, are missing the real main message behind this novel. The main message is find your life purpose. If you can find your life purpose, it doesn't matter if you live to be 15 years or 95 years. There's people who live long lives. They never really found the true meaning of their life. And that's sad. That's a travesty in my mind. But Aiden was able to not only accomplish his goals, but then really find out who he truly was and really what was life. He didn't get to live that life to its fullest. That part, yes, that's sad. But that discovery piece is huge because so many of us go through life without ever actually achieving that part of it.
So that was my next question. Would you agree that Aiden was at peace the most when he was in the homeland?
Yes, I would say he was at peace the most because he, at that moment, he realized the value of his family. He realized what it is that he wanted to get out of life. He realized, yes, there are things in Hollywood that are, really messed up. And either I'm going to go back and say, hey, this isn't for me, or operate with a different mentality. Being able to go to his agent and say, no. For the Oscars next time around, I am taking my sister. Or, for this script, I'm going to, he wasn't really necessarily standing up for himself. He was kind of doing what was being asked of him in Hollywood for the sole purpose of making it. But after he made it, he's like, this is what I was working for. This was because making it wasn't his true calling in life. His true calling in life was his family.
Yeah, because he wasn't really happy in Hollywood, even though he made all the money that he did, met some amazing people along the way, but he thought that's what he wanted. He achieved that, but he wasn't happy with that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so let's go back to the term legacy. How would you define leaving a legacy? I kind of feel like Aiden did in his way the best he could in that short amount of time at the end of his life. How would you define leaving a legacy?
I think as humans, we are so caught up on this concept of legacy, and it's really not that important. I think what's important is you are a good human being. You're a good person. You make the people around you happy. you're loving, you're caring, you look out for your community, you know what I mean? And your community can be your local community where you live, or you're, in this case, if you're in your Assyrian community, like looking out for your people, just being a good person, right? And I hate to simplify it in that way, but I feel like so many of us are chasing this greatness, right? And every single day I hear someone is the new greatest of all time, goat this, goat that, and it's like, at the end of the day, is that really what we're all chasing here?
Right.
I think life is a little bit is actually simpler than we make it out to be in a lot of ways. And so for me, legacy is, if I ask your sibling, or I ask your kids, I ask your spouse, what do you think of this person after they're gone? That answer that they give, that's your legacy. Because the truth is, in 500 years, no one's going to have a response to that question, unless if you're like George Washington, but or what I mean, a historical figure. But even those people, they had their faults, and so legacy is, again, really a summary of who you are as a human being.
Right. Yes. Thank you for that, Ninos. I appreciate that. I just want to quote a couple of sentences from your book.
Yeah.
And that is on page 228. And talking about legacy, it says, most importantly, I'd be happy. My life would have meaning if I leave a legacy, not of Hollywood excess and self-interest, but of self-dedication to a worthwhile cause. I would think that Aidan's worthwhile cause was his visit and to the homeland, only because he ultimately had found out what would bring him true happiness. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I want to remind your listeners that this novel was written and published around, published in 2016. So a lot of the writing happened a couple of years before that. If you remember, at the time in Iraq, there were a lot of terrorist groups, destroying the homeland, and they were very active in that area. And so that's another piece to this, in terms of how he can make a difference, why he was drawn to Iraq, and actually why he ultimately was killed in Iraq.
Right. So is there anything else you want to share with us about the book?
Again, I want to thank everyone who who supported the book. And I was explaining to Svetlana earlier today that I never got into this to become a New York Times bestseller, or to make millions of dollars selling a book. My ultimate goal was to do something for the Assyrian community, and in hopes to inspire other young authors. So if you're out there and you're someone who is interested in becoming a writer, and writing your own novel, please reach out to me. I'm easy to find. There are not a lot of Ninos Hannas in the world. So if you type that up in Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll be able to get a hold of me, and I'm happy to help you and support you in ways that other Assyrians did the same for me.
Yeah, so that's good. Thank you for that encouragement, Ninos. And what about if I do want to talk about, before we move on to how others can get access to your book, tell us, are there any other new projects or books? You touched on this is your first book and you're trying to get, I don't know, did you use the word motivated or inspired for another book?
Yeah, so I have a concept that would have, sort of, it's not a part two, but it would have, and you didn't necessarily have to read the first one to get the second one, but it would have had, some tie-ins from the first one. And then so I started to put a little bit of that together. To be honest, when I did Life for Legacy, I didn't do it with the intention of I'm going to be a full-time author writing novels every year. I also didn't have three kids. And so now with the added responsibilities of 3 boys, and we do have a dog now, which we didn't have at that time. So, the responsibilities at home seem to keep piling up. And really, to be a successful writer, you need to have that. You need to have your space. You need to have that time. And inspiration can come to people at different times of the day. I tend to be more of a nighttime person, where I can sit down at 7 o'clock and do a lot of my writing. But that's also when I'm with the kids, or I'm at meetings and in town for local nonprofits that I support. So, long-winded way of saying, yes, I do have ideas. I eventually would love to do this again. It's not a top priority at this time, though.
Okay, so since we're talking about your kids, how old are they and what are their names?
Oh, you put 14. I got Enkidu, who's 14. Enkidu comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh, for those who are familiar. I have Robbie, who's my middle, he's 12 years old, and Robbie means wise man or teacher. And then I've got my youngest, Brunil, who is 6 years old, and Brunil means son of God.
Right.
So all Assyrian names.
Yes, wonderful. May God bless all three of them and your family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And then going back to your nonprofits that you're talking about. So what are you, what are organizations are you affiliated with, or supporting or volunteering, whatever it may be? Tell us about those organizations.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I mentioned my father's foundation. I'll tell you, he's so active and doing so much for the community. Whenever I get called on to do something to support, I'm there for him. But he's really been running the show with the foundation. I think eventually we'll be picking up a lot of those responsibilities. So that's been a big part. The Assyrian American Association of Massachusetts. This is the organization that has been around for many years in Mass. And I'm actually the current vice president. I have served as president of the organization. So that is one where we're putting in a lot of our time. And it's great because we're a small number, we're a small group, but truly active group. We have lectures around the state. We have successful New Year parties every year. We bring in, Assyrians and non-Assyrians alike, all unite them once a year for Assyrian New Year. The others are the Watertown Community Foundation. So in town, we have a foundation that I'm also on the board of, and Knights of Columbus.
And you did talk about your dad's foundation. Can we just go back to the name of that again?
Yep, the Elias Hanna Cultural and Heritage. Yeah, Elias Hanna Foundation.
Okay, great. So, and what are you doing to keep yourself busy these days? It seems like you're not writing a book anytime soon, but so what are you doing?
Yeah, so again, with the kids and all of their activities, obviously that takes a big chunk of your time. I'm also working full time. I'm a communications consultant, so I do a lot of writing for companies. Also trying to take care of my mental health and physical health. Between I'm a proponent of meditation. I try to meditate every day. Exercise, involved in my local church again with the Knights of Columbus. So, and also very important is maintaining your relationships, your friendships. I think we tend to get so busy in life, and we get so caught up in that, and we don't make time for the people that we love. I was just having dinner last night with a good friend of mine, and I said, "Gosh, I haven't seen you since the holidays, before the holidays, and we're really good friends. And so, what are we doing here? We gotta make a point of seeing each other more often, because that's very important too."
Yes, making an effort and taking time. And not rush time, right? Quality time. Yeah. And then if someone wanted to get a copy of your book, Life for Legacy by Ninos Hanna, how can they get a copy of this, Ninos?
Yeah, so the book was available on Amazon for the longest time. I just recently had it pulled down. But if you're interested, I have plenty of copies. I encourage you to reach out to me. My email address is my first name, so Ninos, the number 44 @gmail.com, Ninos44 @gmail.com. Or you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, even X. So however you want to, find me, go ahead, search me up. I'm more than happy to ship you out a copy.
Yeah, thank you for mine, and you autographed it, so I do appreciate my copy.
You're welcome. You're welcome. With the autograph, it's now worth 10 cents more than it was before.
Oh, okay, great. I'm not selling it, so it doesn't matter. One thing we did not talk about was the cover of the book. Please let your viewers know what is the purpose of the two, I guess, the cut in the middle between the dark and the bright. Can you just explain?
Yeah, when I kept thinking of the cover for this book, this was one image that would constantly come back to my mind. I thought about many different things, but this was one that kept reappearing. And essentially, it's Aiden holding up the statue like he got what he wanted, right? He got the statue. But then the bottom part is an actual statue. And again, that's what he wanted. He wanted to become the legend.
Right.
is that truly what he wanted, right? I mean, that's the idea. Is like, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you put your time and energy into, because you'll eventually get what it is you're seeking. But time is a limited commodity, right? So make the most of your time.
Yes, and those that love you are the most precious, that really care about your true mental health, physical health, and your
Yeah.
well-being. And as Aiden learned, that money is not everything.
Correct.
And because ultimately he'd earned millions, but then that was no good to him, as we know that he died. But I will say that the beginning, how it started off with his death, was very intriguing, and just want to keep getting through his story and finding out what had led him to his ultimate death. And then when I got to the last couple of chapters, I didn't want to read because I didn't want to hear it again.
Yeah. And again, I strategically placed that at the beginning because I didn't want readers walking away thinking, why did he die? Like, why did you kill him off? I wanted to tell them it's okay, he's going to die, but there's a deeper meaning here, and I'm hoping that you can extract that meaning from reading the book.
I think I did, and I hope you can gauge that from what my questions that I kind of feel like I did, but I still didn't want to hear it because I thought he'd come so far, and he was so happy when he was in Iraq and visiting other Assyrians, and really wanted to help them. And I was kind of sad to see that he couldn't fulfill that. And ultimately live out that dream and be able to help others. But I'm sure his mother and his sister would have, well, they did. They carried on his legacy too.
They carried it on. And again, it's okay, because so many of us live through life like this in tunnel vision, and we don't actually see we don't discover our own true purpose and the true meaning of life. We don't. And the fact that he was able to do that and accomplish that, that's a blessing. And so we need to cherish that and celebrate that.
Yeah, and I felt there's a lot of psychology in the book as well. So I really did enjoy it. So Ninos Hanna, is there anything else you would like to add?
Again, I just want to say thank you to AGN and everyone over there for this opportunity to come on and speak about the book. I can't, I'm so grateful is all I can say.
As are we here at AGN. Ninos, we're very grateful and appreciative of your time and allowing us to encourage and inspire other Assyrians that would like to become authors, much like yourself, and you are willing to support and help those. We will have your email address posted at the bottom of the screen, so we will ensure that happens. And then also, thank you so much, Ninos. Hope to meet you one day in person when you're in California, or if I'm in Massachusetts, whatever it may be.
Would love that.
Yeah, thank you. And it was an absolute pleasure. So thank you to all of our viewers. We are assured that you have enjoyed this interview or discussion with Ninos Hanna. And thank you to Nabi Fry Fund for Culture and her support, and AGN, the Assyrian Global Network. Thank you once again.